hold on. Oh my god. Okay. What? Oh, a crowd.
Oh my god.
Oh my
You're about to die.
I just want the crowd.
You
shit.
idiot.
You had one already.
Wait.
Oh my
You.
god.
This video will contain spoilers both for The Batman and for Batman Begins. So, if you haven't seen The Batman,
Stop. Think about what you're doing.
and if you haven't seen Batman Begins,
Unsubscribe, quite frankly. Leave this channel.
Batman Begins and The Batman are more similar than one might initially think. Both films do the job of introducing a whole new Batman to a whole new generation. They both serve as grounded, director-driven takes on the character, and respective to the time of release, they both serve as the darkest and most serious Batman to date. I can't wait for the Batman 2032, where the film will literally be a black screen with the sound of screams of death and people being beaten to pulps. Followed by Batman 2042, which won't even be a film at that point, someone's just gonna come and shoot your parents dead in front of you. I guess it can't get more dark than that. Well, think again. When Batman 2052 rolls around, they'll accuse your parents post-mortem of involvement with the mafia. Got a little carried away there, didn't I? So, straight up for the record, I don't support any sense of tribalism like, yeah, Christian Bale fans fucking suck, Robert Pattinson fans suck and fuck. My one and only sole goal here is to say which of these two films I like better. I'm not going to try and claim that one is better on an objective level or anything like that. Anyone is free to disagree respectfully. Holy fuck, the fact I have to clarify this just goes to really show how much social media has corrupted fan culture. You guys are fucking losers, and I'm better than you. As I kind of made clear already, apples to oranges, I'm just gonna go ahead and straight up say I prefer one fruit to the other. Christopher Nolan's style in Batman Begins is slick, grounded, and contemporary. Not as slick, grounded, and contemporary as it would go on to become in The Dark Knight, so it's a little less refined here. But put it this way, it was a lot less claustrophobic than a lot of the Batman films that came before it. It felt bigger, there was a sense of magnitude to it. It was also serious. Less fairy tale-y than Tim Burton, less panto than Joel Schumacher. It was a Batman film that took the character and the source material seriously. But that didn't stop the film from being intense, action-packed, and exciting. The Batman aims for a less contemporary approach, with a style much more inspired by noir films as well as 1970s films in terms of the overall visual aesthetic. Visually, the film is much darker, more raw, less sanitized than Nolan's take. It feels like the sun is never entirely up in Gotham City. It's either rising, falling, or it's just nighttime and it's pissing it down with rain. That's not to say that we didn't have grungy aesthetics and a lot of rain in Batman Begins, but The Batman is a much more unrelenting film in terms of its overall visual style. And personally, it's one that I think suits Batman down to the teeth. So the point goes to The Batman. Christian Bale's Batman was pretty groundbreaking, a much more grounded take on the character than we'd come to know. Everything rooted in reality and practicality, and one of my favorite aspects of this film is just how well thought out the different tech elements of Batman are. However, it's not just Batman's resources that are on full display here, but his training in the Himalayas with the League of Shadows. Batman in Batman Begins is very much a ninja. He's all about staying in the shadows, staying unseen, being stealthy so that criminals don't know what hit them. Often remaining unseen to the general public, lurking in the darkness in his jet black suit, his voice a mere inhuman growl. And it's gotta be said, the voice is actually something of a deal breaker to me. Christian Bale naturally has quite a deep and raspy voice, but this was too much. There's a scene in the Batcave where Batman is talking to Rachel, and I'm just like, why is his voice not always like that? For the rest of it though, he sounds like he's about to vomit up a fucking lung. Like someone replaced his vocal cords with his anus. He sounds like shit. This film does focus on the very specific ninja angle for Batman, and it does it pretty well, with some of the most effective Batman moments being the moments where Batman remains unseen. Moving over to Robert Pattinson's Batman, we have much more a self-made Batman. His tech and his costume are not provided for him by Lucius Fox This Batman makes his own comic-accurate grey and black suit. And it definitely shows in the overall art direction here. This Batman isn't quite as stealthy and ninja-like as the Batman that we saw in Batman Begins. Heck, when he goes to infiltrate the Iceberg Lounge, he just straight up knocks on the door. This isn't a guy that grapples to gargoyles, he's a guy that will happily walk straight in front of a bunch of thugs mocking them. With his intense glare, he's slow, he's methodical. His voice is deepened, but he doesn't sound like a fucking clown. Not only is he proficient in battle though, this Batman is also a detective. A part of Batman's character that Batman Begins just straight up disregarded. Keeping in with that sort of 1970s film noir style, this Batman spends most of the film hunting for clues, by Jim Gordon's side. I also like that this Batman is a lot more calm as well. So the point goes to Robert Pattinson's The Batman. The duality of the character of Batman is much more on display in Batman Begins. Bruce Wayne is a pretty charismatic until he has to not be guy. And this is all a front as the real Bruce Wayne is Batman. As stated in some pretty fucking on-the-nose dialogue, not gonna lie. I think this is definitely where Christian Bale shines the most though, is when he's Bruce Wayne. I think he really sells that charming billionaire playboy character. Now what's funny is, moving into the Batman, this isn't an origin story. However, Bruce Wayne hasn't really formed his Bruce Wayne identity yet in this movie. He's really the Batman full-time in this one, as Bruce Wayne himself is pretty reclusive. It's kind of us about face when you think about it. Batman's straight up walking up to the door of the Iceberg Lounge, while Bruce Wayne lurks in the shadows listening to Nirvana. An interesting twist? The only time we really see Bruce Wayne even attempt to put on a Bruce Wayne persona is at the mayor's funeral. And the dude is basically just silent. He's a mute effectively. You can tell that this man is introverted. So I guess this is kind of by a technicality for the fact that Batman Begins actually has a Bruce Wayne in it, but the point goes to Batman Begins this time. Batman Begins has two villains, but one main villain, and that being Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows, who view Gotham as a blight on the world, and they are a secret order to ensure that any decadence and criminality is scrubbed out. Gotham is a festering, crime-ridden hellhole, so their plan is to get Gotham to tear itself apart by upping crime to a level where everyone just destroys themselves. And to do that, they're using the fear toxin from Dr. Crane, aka the Scarecrow, the film's secondary villain, as well as this microwave machine that turns all of Gotham's water supply into a vapor so that everyone will start breathing in Scarecrow's fear toxin. Wouldn't it be quicker to just nuke the place? Okay, sorry, I'll shut up now. For a grounded and contemporary take on Batman, it's kind of odd that the main villain is this secret society that wants to destroy Gotham City. The secondary villain is the Scarecrow, who is pretty underutilized, I must say. It's more just a matter of what he can do than who he is as a character. Oh yeah, Carmine Falcone is also in this film. He's running a drugs operation, which is kind of connected with what the Scarecrow is up to, but I must admit he's kind of a boring take on the character. Moving over to the Batman, your main villain is the Riddler, an orphan who previously lived at the Wayne Orphanage, who sets out to expose and weed out the corruption in Gotham's elite. So that's rich and powerful elites like the Penguin and Carmine Falcone. Yep, it's pronounced Falcone in this movie, so I will pronounce it respective to what the movie says. And like Batman Begins, Carmine Falcone is running a drugs operation. I think the Riddler's plan in this one is a lot better and much more believable than what they had with the League of Shadows in Batman Begins. And it feels much more tied to our secondary villains Penguin and Falcone, who I both feel are really well utilized as characters and really nicely interwoven within the story. Not to mention Selina Kyle wanting vengeance against her father Carmine Falcone, directly tying into the story's themes of vengeance. Everything feels just a lot tighter in the Batman than it did in Batman Begins, as far as the villains go anyway. So the point goes to the Batman. Gotham City for the most part resembles Chicago in the Christopher Nolan Batman films. However, Batman Begins focuses mostly on the Narrows, the much more poor, dilapidated, and impoverished part of Gotham City. On a whole, it looks grounded and it looks fine. It looks like a real city. There's not as much to say about this here. Whereas with the Batman, they're bringing in a lot more of the gothic appearance of Gotham City that we've seen in other media. This place is a dark, nasty hellhole. It also has a few landmarks that are clearly taking some inspiration from New York City, such as the Gotham Square Garden. But I look at this city and I much more think, yep, this is where a Batman story should be told than when I look at the Christopher Nolan version. It is in this case quite a bit less grounded, it definitely appears to be more of a fictional city. However, Batman feels right at home here. As said earlier, both of these films serve to introduce a new Batman to a new generation. Batman Begins with the origins of Batman. However, it's told in a non-linear way, kind of starting with the training, before kind of moving into Bruce Wayne's grief and why he went into the training, followed up by kind of the death of the Waynes. However, you do see all of these events play out. You are, though, just thrown into the story of Bruce Wayne first, before getting to any Batman stuff. And like I said with the villain motivations, they do kind of struggle just a little bit to tie the origins and then the Batman stuff all together, but it's still done well for what it is. Moving over to The Batman, they don't so much show the origins, so much as the events of this movie cause Batman to kind of revisit his origins. Riddler is exposing Gotham's elites, and Bruce Wayne's parents were one of Gotham's elites, with Thomas Wayne even running for mayor. But it is revealed that he had ties to Gotham's most revered crime boss, Carmine Falcone, and Bruce Wayne discovers that there's quite a bit more to Thomas Wayne than met the eye. Also, they kind of gloss over this a little bit, but Martha Wayne was in Arkham Asylum. It's quite a big thing to just kind of gloss over like that. Now, this stuff generally happens in kind of the second act of the film. However, the film wastes no time in introducing us to the Batman as a vigilante. There's a great sense of build-up in the opening scene to Batman's reveal, and without necessarily telling us everything that happened and spoon-feeding information to us, having the noir-esque narration really helps this one along. Now, this is definitely another apples to oranges kind of scenario. I think without Batman Begins, the Batman wouldn't be what it is in this case, because Batman Begins is the only live-action Batman film to truly explore the origins of Batman, whereas The Batman serves as a revisit. That's not to say that this wouldn't work on its own 2 feet or doesn't work on its own 2 feet, but Batman Begins still serves a really strong purpose, and I do not want to kind of detract from that in what I'm about to say next. But I just prefer the story of the Batman in general, and I like that the Batman jumps straight into it with the cool Batman stuff, but still manages to introduce us to the character and make clear what his origins were in a really efficient way that brings something new to the table. So the point goes to the Batman, but I really cannot stress enough the importance that Batman Begins held as a reintroduction to the character. It's apples and oranges. Neither of these two films has any shortage of action, with Batman Begins having various different action set pieces, most notable of which being the battle at the docks, the Batmobile rooftop chase, and the fight in the train. And this is all really good stuff here. However, I will say, particularly in combat sequences, the editing is incredibly choppy. We can't really get a feel for this Batman's fighting style because it just cuts to something else every single time. I think the dock scene is actually a really good example of why I personally don't think Batman's fighting in these films works. You can't see what the fuck is going on because the camera's moving around really fast, and there's like jump cuts every second. Batman doesn't even really look like he's hitting anyone, so much as pouncing on different little targets. Heck, even the one-to-one fight between Batman and Ra's al Ghul is completely incomprehensible. The Batman definitely has the benefit of learning from this and being produced in a post-Batman v Superman world. Like it or not, Batman v Superman was the first live-action Batman film to really nail Batman's fighting style, making him feel quick, swift, and violent. And the Batman definitely pulls a few cues from this, albeit less brutal than what we had in Batman v Superman, but for a good reason, as this Batman is not at a point where he's willing to take any lives. The action here is much more well shot and well edited, and that's not a slight against Christopher Nolan or any of the choreographers or anything, it just goes to show you how far this character has come. Okay, so a lot of you guys, if you've seen any of my videos involving Batmobiles, you know what I'm gonna pick here, let's be real. But let's give everything the benefit of the doubt and treat it within kind of its own context. the Batmobile in Batman Begins is never even referred to as a Batmobile. It's the Tumbler. It's a much more grounded take on it, and it's kind of like a tank monster truck capable of going super fast, armed to the teeth. It's designed by Lucius Fox at Wayne Industries, and it was made for the military. That all makes a lot of sense, and yeah, okay, this is a good way of reimagining it, whether I like the design or not. And we get a really, really breathtaking scene of the Batmobile just jumping on building tops. No idea why he felt the need to destroy that police car with 2 policemen in it at the start, though. This Batmobile is an unstoppable force to be reckoned with. Moving over to the Batman, we don't get as much context as to how this Batmobile works within the film itself, but we do in the prequel novel, but I'm kind of gonna try and set that aside because if it's not in the film, does it really count that much? However, what Batman is driving here is a very believably modded out muscle car. We don't see it leaping on rooftops or shooting bullets or anything, but it is a car that is used to chase down the Penguin. And don't let it be mistaken that it is easily just as thrilling seeing this Batmobile going across a fucking bridge as it is to see the fucking Bat tank of the Nolan films going on rooftops. And I think when you can make something that's a little bit more mundane, a little bit more normal day to day, or as far as Batman goes, normal day to day, and make it more exciting than the one that's all over rooftops and fucking trashing shit up, you've got yourself a pretty amazing Batmobile. So point goes to the Batman. Okay, now, again, this is really apples to oranges, and like, I have no music expertise. Batman Begins' score was a collaboration between Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard, and was a lot more percussive and atmospheric than anything we'd really come to know from superhero films at that point. Definitely giving the sense of like this intense action thriller. Batman definitely doesn't have quite as much of a theme here, but there is this cool sort of beat whenever Batman is stealthing around that sounds almost kind of like a heartbeat combined with sort of Batman's cape. This Batman's theme music would be much better defined in later installments. Everything here is fine, it's just it can be kind of difficult to really identify themes for each character here, and it's clear that this is taking a different direction. Moving over to the Batman, Batman's overall theme motif consists of 2 notes that will be stuck in your head by the time the movie's over. And trust me, there is no fucking way of getting them out of here, but then you'll be humming Ave Maria to yourself, or the twisted version of it that plays whenever the Riddler's on screen, or Catwoman's theme. Everything here is just so goddamn catchy. There's also a really fantastic theme for Batman's sort of rebirth into a symbol of hope leading Gotham forward. Michael how's it pronounced? Giacchino. Michael Giacchino's score is memorable, it's fucking beautiful, and almost kind of romantic sounding in a way. It kind of romanticizes the Batman. So, apples to oranges, but the point goes to oranges, point goes to Michael Giacchino's score for the Batman. So overall, the winner is the Batman. I like that movie better. It has a much better version of Batman in my opinion, a much more refined sort of storyline, much more grounded villains, and it just feels more Batman, you know? It feels more faithful to the comic books. Now, I realize how fucking obnoxious it is that I basically took 18 minutes to say, the Batman is a better movie in most every single way. But there are easily arguments against my points, and I really want to acknowledge that everything here is just my subjective personal opinion. And that doesn't mean that I don't like Batman Begins. Batman Begins is an awesome fucking movie. It's not that now the Batman is out, I'm never going to watch Batman Begins again. No way. These are 2 great movies that I love. And I dare say if the comparison was between The Batman and The Dark Knight, things would be a little bit tighter between the 2 of them. But at the same time, since these 2 both serve as introductions to the character, it seems more fair. Comparing movie 1 to movie 2 never feels right to me. But I'd be intrigued to know your thoughts. Please do put them in the comments below, respectfully, you absolute pricks. And until the and until the next time, I really don't have a consistent outro thing to say, do I? Bye. So what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit that big, beautiful subscribe button. And of course, in the description below are links to different social media feeds, including the Patreon. If you're feeling extra generous, like the following people, who are JK Strife, Marcus Ward, Sirius the Skeptic, Biotinarts, Mr. SP, David 20 Covers, Sergio, John Comey, Shodin, George is Lost, Legendary Ray Ray, Cheesemaster769, Adam Myers, and Fayalen Schwarzentraub. Thank you guys, you are the best of the best, but as for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching, guys, and have a great day.